Hi, everyone. Welcome to Transitions. I'm your host, Anne Wagner. We're broadcasting from the beautiful satellite studio of Hunters Bay Radio at Nipissing University in Bracebridge. Today, my guests are Chris Robinson
Hi.
and Valerie Kitchen.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, both of you are experts in peer support. So I'm wondering if, just to remind us, I know you've been on the show before, but maybe you could remind us what peer support is, what that means.
Peer support for me is connecting with a like-minded individual and being able to share my experience without judgment, be able to voice my concerns, be validated, and receive the necessary support that I need for healing and to continue on this road to recovery. So it's connecting with those support people in a group setting or one-on-one. That's what it is for me.
Quite similar for me also. I work in a little bit more formalized setting than Valerie, but it is sharing the common life experience of mental illness. It's giving and receiving. So even though I'm in a paid position, I receive a lot of peer support from the people that I also give it to. Mm-hmm. So it's a two-way situation of giving and receiving. It's a non-judgmental type of support. We're not offering any clinical advice. Mm-hmm. In fact, we're not offering any advice at all. Mm-hmm. We're just listening. We're being very empathetic. We're offering the message of hope that people can get well and people can recover from mental illness and lead a very productive life. Yep. And that, to me, is what peer support is.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a wonderful resource. And just sitting here listening to you talk about it, I'm thinking it could apply in so many different contexts.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Are you aware if it's being used more broadly beyond Muskoka Parry Sound and beyond specifically attached to mental health services?
I think it's, I think it's being used in mental health services worldwide. Mm-hmm. And we realized that from this conference that we went to in April. Right. We went to the very first full peer conference ever in Canada. And there was 400 people came to this conference in Halifax from all across Canada and members from different parts of the world. We met people from Israel, New Zealand, Britain, Australia, the United States. We met them from all over the place. And so it was really empowering to see that peer support is everywhere. Maybe not quite as extensive in different areas, but it is all over the place. Oh, and even Singapore was the very first lady I met was from Singapore. Oh, that's
right. I forgot that. Yeah.
So it's used all over the world, but it's also used in different situations. And Valerie just brought it up that AA is probably the very first peer support organization that she thought of. Mm-hmm.
That's what comes to mind when perhaps we want to look at the origins of peer support, because if you look at AA, it's bringing together one person who is suffering from alcoholism with another person and receiving that peer support together towards sobriety. So that's what my thinking is. Mm-hmm. Now, Chris Ann, when we were chatting earlier, had some other...
I think it probably informally for mental health people, it probably started just in the institutions. Mm-hmm. Long time ago, just patients seeing a need to help another patient, and then maybe a couple of them getting together in a little group and helping each other, and it maybe just informally started there and then worked its way to being more formal after that. Mm-hmm. But I think Val is right that probably the very first formal group was AA. Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like there's been a real evolution, and based on what you're telling me about the conference, it sounds like it's really widespread now.
I think the word is getting out there that when you bring together like-minded individuals with either mental health issues or whatever their common bond is. Moving towards recovery, rather than it being in isolation, but they're doing it together. There's power in numbers, and it works. It works. We can support one another and work towards that journey in recovery. So very much so.
Mm-hmm. So, as you say, we know it works. You both have experience with it, being in the front line, so you can see the effects that it's having. Do you know if it's ever been researched or there's been any sort of systematic study into how effective it can be?
I'm not sure about that. Go ahead.
There has been lots of studies.
Okay.
I've read lots of articles in the psychiatric journals. There have been lots of study about the efficacy of peer support, and it is valued and validated that it does work. And I think that's why our agency has just saw that and jumped on the bandwagon about it. And when we were at the peer support conference, I saw that, other agencies realize that too. In fact, I met one gentleman from a team in Ottawa, and their whole team is made up of peer support workers. Everybody on the team, whether they're a social worker, a nurse, or whatnot, have lived experience. So that tells me that somebody in that agency realizes the validity of peer support.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So maybe you can tell me some more about what was discussed at the conference. What do you remember getting out of it? What were some of the conversations happening?
I got a lot of inspiration. There was some really great speakers. Patricia Deacon was there.
She's a huge guru.
Oh, she's a huge guru for peer support and mental health. And
another thing is that I got out of it is that there needs to be a unity of. It's so scattered. Peer support is so scattered, and there's really not any central training. There's little pods of training here and there, and so they're trying to get a central training and a central certificate for peer support workers. And so that was a big focus of that conference, of trying to come up with some kind of formalized training and a certificate for people so that everybody could be kind of on board at the same. And I got the impression that some people were being paid fairly well, some people were not being paid very well at all, some people were doing really good peer support work, and some people were just answering phones.
Yes.
So there's it was a conference to try to bring people together, and the start of trying to get peer support more formally organized. And it's just the beginning.
Yeah, it's just the beginning,
Yes.
but the awareness is out there.
Yes.
And with 400 people being at this conference in Halifax, that speaks volumes.
It
that
does.
there's a lot of people on board.
Yeah.
And that you were
So-
drawing people internationally to Halifax
Absolutely.
as well.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Yeah.
That really speaks to this movement building.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was powerful.
It was very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris Ann and I were beaming. Yeah. We were,
That's great.
yeah.
And I could see that oftentimes there's this somewhat of a tension between keeping it grassroots, but also then getting the respect it deserves and being recognized. And sometimes that necessitates going down the route of having some standardized training or accreditation or some official recognition that you have gone through certain steps or training to make it not standardized necessarily, but to show that it has some validity behind it or research behind it,
Right.
would you say?
Yeah. Yeah. I know for myself, when I do have people that are coming to me wanting answers on where do I go for this peer support training, there is an organization called Ontario Peer Development Initiative, so OPDI, and they have a website that is just a wealth of information on the subject. So
Wonderful.
for people that are interested.
So we'll make sure we get that up on our website
Yes.
for our listeners to have access to that information. So right now we're going to take a break and hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Hi, we're back with Chris Robinson and Valerie Kitchen and talking about peer support. So I'm just wondering, do you see peer support as a viable model beyond just a formal organization, beyond mental health services?
Very much so. Peer support is basically two individuals coming together with equality and connecting with one another and supporting one another and listening and communicating. And if there is an issue with one individual having mental health issues, that other individual giving that reassurance. I've been there too. I know what you feel like. This is what I did. So again, carrying that message of hope.
So peer support could happen on a park bench, at the beach,
yes,
in your car,
anywhere,
wherever.
Yeah.
It can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, wherever you feel safe.
Yeah.
Really important point. So it's something that all of us can get involved with.
That's right.
So I'm just wondering, I'm thinking about from my own situation, if I were feeling like a friend maybe is in trouble or, I'm worried about them. Do you have any ideas about how to start that conversation? Because oftentimes I think we're a little hesitant. We're worried. We don't want to insult them. We don't want to upset them further. How can we sort of try and get the conversation going?
Good question. I think maybe just, I think that the most important thing to remember about peer support is that you're not giving advice.
That's right.
And sometimes that's really hard, especially when you're talking to a friend. So just perhaps coming to them and just, you could say something like, I just noticed that you seem upset today. Or maybe I noticed that you'd been struggling all week long and I wondered if you wanted to talk. Just something like that, just to start the conversation going. But it's very hard not to give advice. That's, I think, the hardest thing about peer support is to not give advice.
Yeah. I agree. I think our society is very quick to give advice, and with peer support, I like to think of it as equality. So listening is so powerful. I know myself when I am in a bad place, the last thing I want is advice. I want a peer to acknowledge my feelings, and just to listen to me. That's so important. So for an individual who you can clearly see is struggling, just to gently sit that person down and start from, may I offer you the support to help you right now? Would you be comfortable us having a conversation about what you're feeling? I invite you to share with me as a like-minded individual and someone who has been there, such as where you are right now. And just that reassurance. It's such a scary place to be in when you're, whatever mental health issues you're facing. It's such a scary place to be in. So.
And one of the things that I take away from what both of you are saying is it's very non-confrontational, very gentle, supportive,
yep.
Gentle. There's the word, yes. And it's really just inviting.
That's right.
Yep,
yeah.
Inviting.
And one of the things I take away from what you're saying is I would need to constantly keep in my mind, my role is not to give advice. I'm not going to solve everything.
That's right.
Because I think sometimes it's comforting to think that we can solve someone else's issues.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're very quick to fix. The society is very quick to fix.
Well, that is our first thing. You want to
Yeah.
rescue or
Yes.
offer the advice, but it's hard to not do that. And sometimes if the person that you're talking to does start talking about something really dark, and like saying self-harm or whatnot, then you do have to do something about that. You can't just take that nonchalantly. And you do have to say, I have to tell somebody about this because that is above and beyond your role as a peer support worker. But basically it is just supportive listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have you both found yourself in that situation where someone gets to the point where they've told you something that you feel is beyond what you can keep to yourself, or you need to act on it in some way.
Yes.
And how do you handle that? You've established this rapport potentially with someone, and now they've disclosed something to you, and you're feeling like you can't keep it to yourself. How do you go from that point?
I've just been straight up and said, I'm fearful now of what you've told me, and it's beyond my capabilities. So I have to tell my supervisor, and because I feel that I can't help you. I don't have the training for this, and I really feel that I have to tell my supervisor, and perhaps you need to speak to one of the counselors who are better trained to help you in this situation.
Okay.
I agree with Chris-Anne within the program COI. We are not clinical, we're not crisis workers. So if someone is talking about self-harm or harming others, we do need to have the crisis workers called and brought into the situation. Very much so.
We do take the crisis training,
yes,
but it's not our role.
That's
so
right.
we would not step into that role. We do have the skills, but it's not our role.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's another point that's really significant, is that you know when to hand the situation over to someone else.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's for the well-being of the person you're supporting.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one other thing I'd like to touch on is, do you feel that peer support is mainly useful with adults? Could it be used across the age spectrum? Or when do you think it might, for what ages is it appropriate?
I think it's appropriate at all ages.
I think it's appropriate at all ages. I think it would be really effective for adolescents. I really think that's where it would really hit home for like university, high school students, because they keep it all to themselves. And so for them to have someone say to them, yeah, I know what you're feeling, I think that would be huge.
Absolutely, I agree. And there's so much in our society with the texting and the email to have that barrier of not having that human contact. And the university students, the high school students are missing that, but they're scared to say, I need a friend. If there was a safe environment, a safe room where they could go and just let their guard down and be with like-minded individuals and share their struggles, oh my God, there would be so much wellness happening in the rooms of the high schools or the universities or colleges, very much so. Yeah.
And it's such an important point you're making about, if we just provide the safe space where people can just be with each other.
That's right.
And it sounds so straightforward. What do you think is what are some of the barriers? Why aren't we doing it?
Fear.
The stigma. Fear,
yeah, absolutely.
It's just our society. It's changing slowly, but we've just always, mental health has always been a hush-hush thing. And I think, with the Bell campaign was huge to bring awareness to mental health. And it's just the fear and the stigma that have just, people keep things like that in. And I think with teenagers especially, and young adults, they're not going to want to share that. They want to be the same, it's very important for that age group to all be like, they all want to be alike, right?
Yes.
They don't want to be standing out and be different in a negative way. They might want to be different in a positive way, but they don't want to be different in a negative way. And mental health issues are looked at as a negative way,
Yeah, very much so.
And the irony being, they're much more common than we recognize.
That's right.
It's still in the closet. It's in the closet. And I think Chris-Anne and myself, we have an opportunity here with carrying the message to bring it out of the closet and say, I've been there. Chris-Anne's been there. And we're working towards our recovery. I welcome all of you who are suffering to join us. So it's just that welcoming. Yeah.
Well, I couldn't have said it better. I think that's really our takeaway message today. There are people out there who want to support you. We can support each other. We can be on either end. We can be the one who needs the support. or we can be the one receiving the support. Thank you both so much for coming in and talking to us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
You've been a wealth of information, and all the resources you've mentioned today we will post on our Facebook page. And again, if you'd like to contact us at Transitions to share your thoughts or ask us any questions, you can reach us at transitions@hbr@gmail.com. That's transitions@hbr@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll talk again next week.